We are going to now rearrange formulas in terms of, this case is V. So we're going to do all our algebra stuff with variables as opposed to a lot of numbers this time.
Okay, so we're going to try and get V on its own. So the first thing, let's get rid of this fraction to start with. Okay, can you explain what's the step I've done there?
All right, you multiplied both sides of the equations by 2. That will get rid of the 2 from the bottom.
Okay, so I just times by 2, and you can see it's always doing the same thing to both sides,
right.
And it's got the effect of removing the fraction. Next up,
we have to get rid of our t. Let's divide both sides by t.
Whoop, don't really need that bracket.
So u plus v. So when we divide both sides by t, that cancels the t from the right-hand side and divides it on the left-hand side.
Okay, nice. And then, one stage left, 2s over t minus u equals v. What have I done here?
I have subtracted u from both sides of the equation. Here we are back and doing the next one. Making L the subject time this time. It's underneath the square root, so we got to think carefully about this one.
Okay.
We can't mess with L yet. We have to get the square root all by itself.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do here, let's get all of that onto that side first, right?
Right, so we divide both sides by 2 pi, because we need to get the square root all by itself first before we can get to the L itself.
We've divided by 2 pi. Nice change of colours.
It is very pretty.
Divided by 2 pi.
Okay.
All right.
Now, if we want to get rid of our square root, undo the square root to get the L, we square both sides of the equation.
Okay, so we need to get this.
And it's all squared. Exactly.
Okay.
And then finally we have to get rid of the g.
Oops.
Oh.
That should have been a bit higher up, shouldn't it?
Yep, that'll be for the next step.
Square.
Squared.
So we're squaring. Square or squared? Square both sides.
Squared both sides, yep.
All right.
And then the last step, we have to multiply both sides by g, because that will leave us L by itself.
So we've got g lots of t over 2 pi squared.
All squared. And we did that by multiplying by g.
Yeah, let's use that one. Times g.
Sounds good. Times g.
Times g.
Right.
There we go. Right. These get slightly harder as we go.
Ooh, they certainly do.
Okay, make x the subject of the formula. How are we going to do this?
Good question. I had a couple thoughts going through my head. Shall we subtract 1 over y and get x on the one side of the equation, even though it's all by its on the bottom?
So q minus 1 over y is 1 over x. All right. And what would you do from here?
Well, my trouble is I have it on the bottom of the fraction. And one of my thoughts is we could make the left-hand side have a common denominator over y, and then reciprocal both sides.
Okay. So
but I'm open to any other potential steps that might be an easier method.
I'm just trying to think how I'll do this one as well.
All right. So if we multiplied everything by xy, then we're going to have to do some factoring in there. I think we might be just as easy to get a common denominator, or what are you thinking? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, do the common denominator with y, right?
Okay.
So let's just show what we've done again. So just to start off with, we
subtracted 1 over y.
Took away 1 over y. And the problem we're faced, and we're just kind of pausing to decide what to do next, is we want to try and get all of this as one fraction and all of this as one fraction, and then we can flip it all over.
Right.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so if we times this q by y over y, in other words, times it by 1.
Yep. Now we're just doing fraction work. We're not solving equations yet.
Okay, and we can just put this all together. So
right.
we've got qy minus 1 all over y.
Super.
Equals 1 over x, a little bit of fractions.
Right. Now the next thing, I love this trick. And people don't do it very often, or not that I see, is if we flip this fraction, it means I have to flip the other fraction. 1 over x just becomes x over 1.
Okay.
I've in essence done the problem.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Let's try the next one. That's a nice little trick, that one.
That is a nice little trick. Now that would probably be a level 6 problem. And it would have been maybe a 7 or 8 problem, but you've seen it already, so now it's allocated to level 6.
We've gone and ruined the unfamiliar.
We have indeed. All right. Oh, make an X the subject.
These are nice. So you've got X's now in more than one place. This is why this one's a little trickier again.
Right.
Okay, so let's just first of all get all the X's on one side. So we've got what, AX minus 3x.
Yep.
And I'm going to add that C as well.
Right. 2 steps at once. We can do that. We're
Can we
getting
do
good at
2
these.
steps at once?
We can. We're getting good at these.
You think? Should I do a bit of explanation?
Yeah,
Let's have a
just
little
to make
bit of
sure.
explanation. So what I did 2 things. I took away 3x
X.
and
You
I
added C.
added C. Okay, so we did that to both sides. We took away 3x and we added C. Probably should have done 2 stages.
That's all right.
All right. Okay. So now, how are we gonna? We've got 2 x's. How are we gonna make that into just 1 x on its own?
The only way I know how to do it is to factor out an X.
Okay. So we've got x times a minus 3. We add c. We haven't done anything on this side.
Right.
And now to get x on its own.
I divide both sides by a minus 3.
Very nice. So we'll just put in that we've divided by a minus 3.
Super.
Yeah.
Oh,
What's that?
That's-
Divided by a minus 3.
all right. Let me click off that.
That's your alarm.
That's my alarm saying.
Okay, last one. This is going to be a long podcast, this one, but it is quite a tricky topic.
Okay, so
2 W's
W's.
again.
Ooh. To do this one, we got to multiply by our common denominator, which is x minus w, both sides.
Okay, so we multiply by that. We get rid of the fraction.
Right. Some people think of it as cross-multiplying because it's 2 fractions. Either way works. Then I have to distribute the p. So px
Px minus
pw. Good thing it's not pu.
Pw. Oh dear.
All right,
Okay.
we are solving for w. So let's add pw to both sides of the equation. So px is 2w plus pw.
Okay, because we're trying to get the w's on the same side, right? That's the thing we're looking for.
Right.
Now it's like what we had in our last example. It's
The w.
yeah. Now we've only got 1 w,
Yep.
px, and finally you've got w on its own. Just take our px and divide by 2 add p. We're
Right.
done.
We're done. And this kind of scenario here happens oftentimes. You have to solve in your IB exams. You sometimes have to do what's called the inverse, and this is a calculation you actually have to do in that process. The other part to get that set up, you learn later on, but this calculation you have to do for inverses oftentimes.
Yeah, no, it's a very good skill to know.